Hi, my name is Jennifer Collins, so I'm glad that you've joined me for this anatomy diagramming class. So I'm going to give you a second and feel free to pause this video anytime you need to, but you're going to need drawing paper or maybe construction paper or notebook paper, and then you're going to need a pencil and then either colored pencils, markers, or crayons. If you need to pause for a second and go get those items, feel free. Okay. So each week, what I will be doing is I will be uploading to our OutSchool class what the objective is for the week. And so week one, of course, is a video. As you see, we're together on the video. And you'll watch this video and it'll let you know what's going on in the class and what you'll be drawing for the week. Next week will be a live Zoom and we will be together, but this one's just a video just because it's Christmas time and everyone's schedule's kind of crazy. So it worked best for the other families to do a video for this week. So today, our first lesson is going to be on the heart. And again, we talked about what we need. So this will be our basic diagram. So if you want to pause it, as you're tracing it, you can hold up your piece of paper and put it over the screen and trace it that way, or you can just draw it freehand. But let's begin with our drawing in pencil first. Now, I want you to remember something. This class is for our beginning students that don't have a lot of experience with art, but also for our advanced students. So I don't want you to worry. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is your diagram. The whole point of this class is to have fun drawing different body systems, but also we're going to learn about it at the same time. Go ahead and feel free to pause it while you're tracing the heart diagram. All right, so now that you have it drawn on paper and pencil, we'll move along. So on the left side of your paper, go ahead and draw these 6 blanks. And once you have your 6 blanks and you've numbered it, then on the diagram itself, go ahead and draw the lines out to the side so that you can identify what we're talking about in the blanks. So for this, we're learning the different parts of the heart as we're labeling it as we're going along, and you're going to hear some new vocabulary words. So number one, and we're going to talk more in depth about it, but for number one, we have the pulmonary artery. So as you're writing that down, let's try our hardest not to misspell it. You do not have to put them in different colors or anything like that, but that's up to you. Number two is our aorta. So you want to go ahead and say that. Say aorta. It's different. And then for number three is the left atrium. Go ahead, you say it after I say it. And then for number four, it's our left ventricle, right? And then for number five, we have the right ventricle. And number six, we have the right atrium. So I want you to think about our heart diagram. It's been separated in the middle, and we've got the left side and the right side. So we've got a left atrium and a ventricle, and we have a right ventricle and an atrium. Here is a previous student's drawing of the heart. And so you're adding color to it. And the recommended colors, but of course you can do it however you like, is a blue, red, and either a light brown or maybe a cream color. Some areas you'll notice on the diagram are shaded darker and some are lighter. And the reason why is some of the areas of the heart has more oxygen than other areas. And you're fixing to learn more about that. But for right now, I just wanted to show you an example of the heart diagram. Feel free to pause this video and go ahead and add color if you like. So let's think about our heart a little bit like a house, right? The outer walls of the house is the outer muscle, and the myocardium is what it's called. So just think about here, go ahead and make the heart with your fist. And so we're thinking about this outer layer out here is our outer muscle or myocardium. The rooms of the house inside of it is there, that's the chambers. The doors of the heart are called valves. So it's opening and closing at different times. And then the plumbing of the house is going to be the arteries and the veins. The electrics of the heart, how it works, that's the electric conduction system. So let's think about maybe your AC system or your electric box outside, but your heart is pumping on its own. And if your heart stops, what do they use? Do you know what they use if your heart stops? They actually use probes that have electricity in it, and they will put it on your chest and they'll bring you back to life that way by almost shocking your body. So here is an internal view of the heart, and this one is a little bit more detailed. It's got like the tricuspid valve and things like that. But I'm showing it to you so you see a more detailed version for our older students, but do not worry, you do not have to identify all of those parts. The human heart is a four-chambered muscle. It's shaped and size roughly like a man or woman's closed fist. So just like before us, put your fist up and imagine that muscle around it. That's how big your heart is. Just imagine in your chest how big that your heart is. It's 2/3 the mass of the left of the midline. And so we're thinking about separating the heart, and 2/3 of it is more of the heart and the rest is more of that muscle or, or the fat tissue around it. The heart is enclosed in a pericardial sac, and that's just, of course, a layer around it. And the visceral layer, it forms the epicardium. So you do have fat around your heart, but you also have muscle around your heart. And it's just protecting it. Layers of the heart wall. There's 3 layers of tissue that form that heart wall. That outer layer is the epicardium. The middle layer is the myocardium, and the inner layer is the endocardium. And so we look at those prefix words at the beginning: epicardium, outside; middle layer, myo; inner layer, endo, meaning coming in. So we want to look for those little prefix words at the beginning. So here's our drawing again that you're working on right now as I'm teaching. Hopefully you are going ahead and coloring your diagram. So the internal cavity of the heart has how many chambers? 4. Okay, so we got to memorize that. 4 chambers, right? So we got the right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, and left ventricle. The 2A are thin layered or thin walled chambers that receive blood from the veins. The 2 ventricles, though, are thick walled chambers that forcefully pump blood out of the heart. Our ventricles are pumping blood out and the atrium's pulling it in. The differences in thickness of the heart chamber are due to variations. This is going to reflect the force that each chamber is going to generate. The right atrium receives deoxygenated blood. The left atrium, the other side, receives oxygenated blood. So that means it has lots of oxygen in it. So what do we breathe in? We breathe in oxygen, right? And many times we call that O2. That's just the chemical form for it. And then we breathe out what? Right, carbon dioxide, and that's CO2, okay? So one side of the heart is getting blood that has oxygen in it, and the other one is lacking oxygen. It needs more, right? The valves of the heart. Pumps need a set of valves to keep the fluid flowing from one side to the other. So your heart actually has a pump in it, like a water pump. The heart has two types of valves that keep the blood going in the right direction. It doesn't go in one way and then go back. There's an actual path that it has to follow. The right valve is called the tricuspid valve, and the left valve is the bicuspid valve, right? And between it is called a semilunar valve. When the ventricles contract, just kind of like my hand, it's contracting. It's the muscle in my hand is making it go together. It will close to prevent blood from flowing back. So think about all this water. Let's just pretend like we're looking at a water line, right? And all the water's coming, and all of a sudden the valve's going to close on it and stop that water from coming. When the ventricle relaxes, it closes the valves and prevents the blood from backing back up. Pathway of blood is next. While it's convenient to describe the flow of blood through the right side of the heart and then over to the left side, it's important to realize that both the atrium and ventricles contract at the same time. So it's not like our heart has one side that's contracting and the other side's just doing nothing and being lazy. Both sides are contracting. So both pumps are working. Blood is flowing from the right atrium to the right ventricle, and then it's pumped to our lungs to receive the oxygen. And then it goes from our lungs, our blood flows back in again to the left atrium and then to the left ventricle. And then it all starts to cycle again. The myocardium of the heart wall, that's that muscle layer we talked about, it's in constant movement, trying to get oxygen in and out. And that's why you're going to see on the diagram, certain parts are shaded darker and certain parts are shaded lighter. But here we're going to watch a little video to summarize it for us. And hopefully you're still adding some color to your diagram.
Your heart is a pump which powers your body. The pumping action moves blood around your body through a network of blood vessels supplying essential fuel in the form of oxygen and nutrients to every cell, nerve, muscle and vital organ throughout your body, allowing you to function and do all the things you do in everyday life. Your heart sits in the center of your chest between your lungs and is protected by your rib cage. It is about the size of your clenched fist. The outer walls of your heart are mostly made of powerful muscle, which squeezes and relaxes to pump blood around your body. Your heart pumping rates changes to meet the fuel needs of your body. The pumping rate speeds up when you are excited, exercise, or even drink a strong cup of coffee. When you are relaxed and resting, your heart rate is slower. The muscular walls of your heart surround 4 heart chambers or rooms. The 2 upper chambers or rooms are called the left and right atrium, and the 2 lower chambers or rooms are called the left and right ventricles. The left and right atria are like the blood entrance rooms of the heart. The left and right ventricles are the blood exit rooms. Blood travels through a network of blood vessels between the heart and lungs and the rest of the body in a figure of 8 pattern, supplying fuel in the way of oxygen and nutrients as it goes. Blood, largely empty of its oxygen fuel cargo, enters the right atrium through a blood vessel called the inferior and superior vena cava. The blood then passes into the right ventricle. The right ventricle squeezes the blood into the lungs through the pulmonary artery. The blood picks up a new supply of oxygen in the lungs. It is then pumped back to the heart through the pulmonary veins and enters the left atrium. From the left atrium, it passes into the left ventricle. The left ventricle has a thick, strong muscular wall as it needs to squeeze with force to pump blood out to the rest of the body through the aorta. Heart valves ensure one-way blood flow. Valves lie at the exit of each chamber of the heart. These valves act like gates which open and close to ensure that blood travels in one direction only, a bit like a one-way traffic system. Flow of blood through the heart doesn't happen automatically. Your heart has its own electrical conduction system which triggers its pumping action. Being the hard-working muscle that it is, your heart requires a good fuel supply too. It gets the oxygen and nutrients it needs through its own blood vessel network called the coronary arteries. The two main coronary arteries, the right and left, branch off from the aorta. They in turn branch off into smaller arteries which supply oxygen-rich blood to all parts of the heart's muscle wall. The right coronary artery supplies the right side of the heart, and the left coronary artery supplies the left side of the heart. Together, the heart, with its muscular walls, chambers, heart valves, electrical conduction system, and a network of blood vessels, enable blood to be pumped around the body effectively. Your heart is the powerhouse of your body. Look after it. It's never too late to make lifestyle changes to keep your heart and blood vessels in good working order, so that you can do the things in your life that are important to you both now and in the future. Find out what you can do to look after your heart at hearthelp.org.nz. Your heart is a pump.
Okay, so let's just summarize. It starts in what part of the heart? Do you remember? Starts in the right side. So we're going right atrium, right ventricle. And then it comes over and it's going the left atrium and left ventricle. And as it goes to the lungs, the blood that leaves has lots of oxygen in it, right? Okay, it has lots. And what is opening and closing? It's valves that open and close. Right? Here. Can't wait to see the diagram. So this is just some fun facts, all right? Your heart will beat around 3 million times in your lifetime. It's a lot. 3 million. Blood that is lacking oxygen is dark red. And this is why many times you'll see it be blue on diagrams. And so hopefully on your diagram where it's lacking oxygen, it's going to be that dark red, almost like a burgundy color or maybe a blue. Blood that has oxygen is usually bright red in color. The heart has 4 chambers, right? And at the doctor's office, many times they'll check your heart rate by taking your blood pressure, and they'll put a cuff on your arm and they're squeezing a little balloon looking thing. But what they're doing is they're checking to see how many times does your heart go up and down. All right. This is a great video that kind of summarizes the circulatory system, and this is Amoeba Sisters. So if you've never seen any of the Amoeba Sisters videos, they have a whole series on YouTube on different body systems. They have a really great one on bacteria. So let's watch this one together.
Did you have breakfast this morning? Did you ever wonder after you eat breakfast and your food is digested, how is that glucose getting transported around your body? Or as you take a breath in, how does that oxygen get transported around? Or when you exhale, how does that carbon dioxide get transferred out? Are these only questions I pondered during breakfast? Maybe. But your circulatory system is absolutely fascinating and highly involved in this. In this short intro video of the circulatory system, we will mention some basics about its functions and trace the pathway of how blood travels through your heart. But please know before we get started, there are gigantic textbooks on the circulatory system itself. So obviously this video is just an intro. We're going to first talk about blood, the medium of how we transport glucose and gases. As we mentioned in our body systems intro video from many years ago, there are some misconceptions. Human blood is red, and always red, although the shade of red can vary based on how much oxygen is in the blood. Veins and arteries are often drawn in diagrams as blue or red to show whether they have lower or higher concentrations of oxygen. But that's just how it is used in most diagrams. It doesn't mean the blood or the veins or the arteries are actually that color. Veins that you see under your skin may look blue or green, but that involves the way they appear under the skin, and the reason for this would make a great physics topic. But I digress. Human blood has a lot of functions. It maintains a certain pH, temperature, osmotic pressure. All of this is very important for homeostasis. It transports things like hormones, nutrients, and gases. And it's made up of different components. One component includes plasma, the liquid portion. Water, proteins, salts, lipids, you'll find them in this liquid portion of blood known as plasma. Another component includes cellular components. This means red blood cells, which do the transporting of gases, white blood cells, which can fight infections, and platelets, which are actually cellular fragments, and they're involved with helping your blood clot. Very important when there is damage to the body. Red blood cells have an iron-containing protein called hemoglobin, and that is where the red coloring of blood comes from. So when we're talking about blood and we're just introing the circulatory system, we're going to focus on how this blood moves around in the human body. Human heart anatomy observes the heart divided into two distinct and separated partitions, a deoxygenated or low oxygen partition and an oxygenated partition. There are some human congenital heart conditions that can result in this oxygenated and deoxygenated blood mixing, however. More on that at the end. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. Think A for away. Arteries are typically oxygen-rich, but there are exceptions. Veins generally carry blood to the heart. Veins typically are oxygen-poor, but there are exceptions. Capillaries are small blood vessels, and it is at the capillary level where oxygen is delivered to organs and tissues and where carbon dioxide will be picked up to travel back to the lungs. So looking at this heart, the right side, and that's the person's right, so for you it will look opposite, pumps deoxygenated blood, and the left side pumps oxygenated blood. We can also see four chambers, the right atrium and right ventricle, and the left atrium and the left ventricle. I like to remember that A comes before V in the alphabet, so that helps me remember that A's for atria are at the top of the heart, V for ventricles are at the bottom of the heart. Atria also have thinner walls than the thicker walled ventricles. The heart also contains valves, which we'll see when we get to tracing the pathway of blood. The valves are one-way structures that help separate the chambers and also prevent backflow of blood. Ready to take the adventure of a lifetime? An adventure tracing the pathway of blood through the heart? We're going to start with blood that is in a human toe. This blood is deoxygenated. It needs to get to the heart so that it can be pumped to the lungs to pick up oxygen and then be spread throughout the body. It's going to get there through the vena cava, inferior vena cava to be specific, as the superior vena cava is above the heart. The blood enters the right atrium. The right atrium contracts, pushing the blood through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. The right ventricle contracts, pumping the blood through the pulmonary valve to the pulmonary artery. By the way, when you see the word pulmonary, it likely involves lungs. The pulmonary artery takes blood to the lungs. The lungs are where red blood cells in the blood will take on oxygen and release carbon dioxide. Now this blood is oxygenated. It needs to return to the heart so that the heart can pump it throughout the body. The oxygenated blood travels through a pulmonary vein to the left atrium. The left atrium contracts and the blood travels through the mitral valve, also known as the bicuspid valve, into the left ventricle. The left ventricle contracts and pumps the blood through the aortic valve and out a major artery known as the aorta. The aorta is a major artery that carries oxygenated blood throughout the body. Now, I don't want to neglect the fact that the heart needs its own blood supply for delivery of oxygen and glucose. The heart can receive this blood supply through coronary arteries. Coronary arteries branch off the aorta and eventually deliver blood into capillaries. These capillaries deliver oxygen and glucose to the heart. Coronary veins will take the deoxygenated blood to the right atrium, where the blood will eventually travel the pathway to become oxygenated. In fact, to quiz yourself, can you pause the video and trace the pathway of blood again, starting with the right atrium? Okay, all together. Right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, pulmonary valve, pulmonary artery, lungs, back through the pulmonary vein, left atrium, mitral valve, left ventricle, aortic valve, aorta. Takes it to the body, and then it will eventually return through the vena cava, back to the right atrium again. Whew, it almost makes you want to turn it into a song, but we won't. The significance of the pathways, how they interact, the coordination of contraction, and many more elements are part of every beat of your heart. A human heart beats over 100,000 times per day, so it's significant that every beat is coordinated and blood is directed where it should go. The complexity of the cardiac cycle, which is the coordinated sequence of the heart's contractions and relaxations, isn't something this short video can go into. Hopefully a separate video on that soon. One last thing. There are many conditions in which the heart doesn't function correctly. Anatomically, some heart conditions change the pathway flow of blood. One example that we had mentioned before is an atrial septal defect. The septum is the muscular wall that separates the right and left side of the heart. So a septal defect could mean an opening and oxygen-rich blood could mix with oxygen-poor blood. Depending on the size, this can cause further problems, such as an abnormal heartbeat, stroke, or potentially heart failure in severe cases. Some medications can help the symptoms, or surgery can be an option. There continues to be more advancements for treating cardiovascular conditions. If you have interest in the amazing field of cardiology, take a look at the suggested further reading links in the video details. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
So let's review. The arteries are pulling blood away and the ventricles are pulling blood in, right? And then the right side usually lacks oxygen, and that's the side that we're seeing that blue or maybe a burgundy color. And then the right side is the side that has more oxygen. We're going to see it be that bright red in color, usually on diagrams. And if you have your heart drawing and you separated it in the middle, the atrium parts, right and left atrium, are up on the top part, and the ventricles are on the bottom. So just think about if you were just going to have an imaginary line through the middle. The atriums are on the top and the ventricles are on the bottom, right? And what's opening and closing, we're calling those valves. Here are some other drawings. And of course, for our more advanced students, if you want to add texture and shading to your heart diagram, feel free to do that. All right, so that is today's lesson. Hopefully you have your heart completely done and all the colors added to it and everything. I would love to see your heart diagram. And so in OutSchool, I am going to post a link to Flipgrid. And if you've never used Flipgrid, you just use a little code, and it's a page that I've created myself. So don't worry, other people are not going to see it, just your classmates. And on Flipgrid, it allows you to hold up your diagram and just pretty much show and tell. So you can say your name if you want to, or if you know, for me, for example, I would start the video and I would say, hi, my name's Jennifer, and I'd like to show my heart diagram, and then just hold it up. That's all you have to do. It's very easy. Now, of course, that is optional. You don't have to at all, but I would love to see your diagram. All right, so next week we will be having a live Zoom together. So it will be on Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm not sure what time zone everyone that's watching might be on something different, but it's going to be 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will go from 9 to 9:45, and we're going to be drawing the lung next week. So before you come to the meeting, make sure you've got your drawing paper and your colored pencils or crayons or maybe even paint pens, whatever you want to use. All right, so I will see you next week. Thanks so much. Bye.